it is very rare that a client has a one focus issue. You want to have a network that you can reach out to. How do you get that information from the average client?
Hi, I'm Peter Kramer, Digital Communications Coordinator with the State Bar of Wisconsin, and I'm attending the annual meeting and conference in Madison, where I'm having a chance to chat with some of our awesome speakers and presenters here who are kind enough to share their wisdom with Wisconsin's legal community. And so today I'm joined by Chelsea Lee Williamson. She's at Cordell Cordell in Milwaukee, and she was talking about overlapping areas of practice and some of the considerations attorneys should have for that when they're doing that. So I just want to say welcome, Chelsea.
Thank you.
So Chelsea, I just want us to start by, so the name of the session was Where Paths Collide, Identifying Pitfalls of Overlapping Practice Areas. So that's a long title, but it's for a big topic.
Right.
And so I was kind of hoping, just in brief, can you kind of give us just a general overview about what the session was about?
The session was really to focus on, everybody has an area of expertise, and oftentimes in our profession, we have to reach out to other experts. That it is very rare that a client has a one focus issue, and we might not even know that from the beginning, but things may come up along the way. Me being a divorce attorney, oftentimes clients will start talking about, do I need to file for bankruptcy? I'm not a bankruptcy attorney. I don't know anything, or I don't know enough to know what to advise them on. So the focus was, you want to have a network that you can reach out to, and you also want to know how to develop where those overlaps may be. How do you get that information from the average client?
I think when people start really digging into some of these issues, they're going to find that whatever life event is happening, it's going to touch on potentially multiple legal areas of practice. What are some of the common overlapping areas of practice?
So some of the common ones and the ones we focused on today were, divorce, bankruptcy, foreclosure. Immigration is a big one that we're seeing more and more often. There's minor overlap even with criminal law. Is there a domestic violence charge while the divorce is pending? You have a lot of wonderful general practitioners, but who still usually don't do everything. They might do 2 or 3 areas. Also, these are things where maybe it's not overlapping at the initial time of the action, but 5-7 years later, something's coming up where the divorce you did now becomes relevant in the bankruptcy action or in the foreclosure of the marital home.
Because these are wide-ranging, it can be something that would be easy to maybe have a misstep. Mm-hmm. So I guess what I wanted to ask is, what are some of the common missteps that attorneys may make when they're dealing with a client who has overlapping areas of practice? I
think the most common misstep is giving blanket information that makes the client believe, I don't need to talk to anyone else. So it may seem like it's a very definitive, easy issue, but you still want to tell them to go confirm with someone, because you are also operating off of the information they're giving you, which might not always be the entire picture. A lot of times in my own practice, we're dealing with so many financial issues that we want them to talk to tax professionals. We want them to talk to the bankruptcy attorney to know their options. But maybe based on what they've told us, it may make sense that none of those things should be on the table. And so I think the best thing that we can do is hedge our bets and say, I'm not an expert in these areas. I'd like you to go consult with someone, or at least do a brief joint meeting so that you are not steering them down a path that may impact one of those other areas.
As an attorney then, and with these issues coming up, how do you manage client expectations when an outcome for, say, family law may ultimately impact something else, let's say a bankruptcy filing?
I think the most important thing that we can do is let them know if there's things we maybe can't predict. And so we might be making the best outcome right here and right now. In divorces, for example, we are often advising them, this says who pays what, but if the other person doesn't pay and then that creditor comes after them, this agreement isn't binding on the creditor, but you have options, you have mechanisms that we can help protect you, that can make you whole again. The other thing that we need to be often thinking about is, are we doing things creatively that might actually be bypassing some protections that they have? That's their free right to do that, but you want to make sure that they know the risk involved if there is any. And oftentimes too, it's giving them advice when they leave to say, you still need to change these other things. Estate planning, go change your will if you're getting divorced. I don't do that personally, and they probably are thinking that's the last thing on their mind at that time, but they probably want to take care of that in the next few months.
So how can then attorneys collaborate with other lawyers, but then not confuse the client, and then also not maybe duplicate the work of another attorney?
That's an excellent question. I think, creating a strong network so that when you are contacting somebody in a different field that you trust their work product, that they're going to be an ethical person who is not going to just see this as a business opportunity. There's also a difference between, are you informally reaching out to get a little bit more information versus are you referring them as a client? I think you can address the elephant in the room. They might be duplicating a little bit of billable time, but is that going to save them so much in the long run that it was worth that half hour where all three of you were on the phone discussing their options? You can, kind of the saying is you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. So a lot of times you're telling clients, I'm advising you to go talk to this professional, and they might not do it. And unless it is something that you have to do for your case, you can't force them to. So unless you're saying, I can't continue to represent you unless you do this, which very rarely comes up, all you can do is supply them with the knowledge, supplying them with the reference. And if you don't have a specific referral, reach out to your own network. Does anyone know someone who does this? That's why things like this are so great. You meet people in other fields so that you can then hopefully say, I've got a person for you.
Yeah, and that leads so perfectly to my next question, which was, especially for solo and small firm attorneys who make up a large portion of the attorneys in Wisconsin. It may just be them. Maybe they have a colleague who does a different area of practice, but do you have any advice for them if they are dealing with a client who needs multiple areas of practice, but they don't have that person that they can immediately hand a referral off to? What do you tell them?
I think you have a couple different options. One is we have wonderful listservs. So if you genuinely know no one to start asking, shoot it out to the listserv. Everybody in the state of Wisconsin is so helpful, and they are quick to tell you who they know, what they do. It might also be that you know someone in that area, but not geographically in that area. So oftentimes I'm based in Milwaukee. I'll know Milwaukee attorneys, but my client is based somewhere else. Start with the Milwaukee attorneys. Who do you recommend in this part of the state? If you genuinely still are at a loss, get involved in your local bar association. Find the closest firm where you do know someone and ask them. People are not generally going to be upset if you come in going, where do I even start with this? That's so much better than just sort of leaving a client high and dry. What
practical steps can attorneys take to sort of, if they're dealing with a client who may be starting to realize that they have multiple issues, or multiple areas of practice that they may need, how can attorneys kind of help spot that and then help the client really understand that, I can't handle all of this?
I think the first step in that is you want to get as much information as possible, and clients sometimes are hesitant to give you bad facts. So you want to make them comfortable in sharing all of that. So in divorce, a lot of times we say, what's the worst thing the other party would say about you? Get them on the table. You're there to protect them, and you need to know these things to help do that. Find out what they don't know. So many people genuinely have no idea what their finances are like. That's the first step. Let's figure out, do we need to run a credit report because you don't know what cards are out there? Do we need to go directly to the financial institutions to get statements because you don't know what the balances are? Is it that your spouse has been the one in control of these things? There's ways to do that. I think also, when they start to get overwhelmed, hit pause. Let them process potentially this stressful bad news and say, let's regroup after you've had time to think this through. Give them homework assignments. Okay, now that we know these are the areas, you need to get XYZ document by this date to me. You need to go consult with somebody else within this time frame and then follow up with them. They're humans. They're taking in a lot of information. They might misinterpret what you've said. So the best thing too is make sure you are always following up in writing with what they're supposed to be doing and what they're supposed to be taking out of this. Because a lot of times they'll think, oh my gosh, you just told me I lost my case. When really you're going, no, but we just need to, address this issue so that, we have a leg up. And what can we do to help you, even though they've only heard, I'm losing, I've got nothing.
You've done an entire session on this now. I'm sure a lot of things came up in that conversation, but If you had a top piece of advice then for any attorney who's just starting to deal with this, what would you tell them?
Be comfortable saying, I don't know. It does not mean you are not smart. It does not mean you are not capable. It might also mean you know it, but not at that right exact second. I think one of the most useful tools you can do, especially as you're gathering information for clients, is saying, let me process all of this, and then we'll talk again about what are the next steps. Whether that gives you time to go consult with other people and say, I just have 30 different thoughts in my head, which ones do we start with? Or it can help you set up a plan. You also, all of us want to be the expert in our own field. We don't want to be the dabblers who kind of do everything okay. And so I think, feeling comfortable saying, this is my area of expertise, I know nothing about this other area, can actually help your reputation more than anything. So I think just feeling comfortable and not thinking you have to have the answer right then, right there.
Chelsea Lee Williamson at Cordell Cordell in Milwaukee, thank you so much for chatting with me and for sharing this information with the legal community.
Thank you.